Hello, today I'll be talking about the television series Grownish. Why have I chosen this series specifically? As a black woman who wanted to and then ended up going to uni, a show like Grownish meant a lot to me as the cast includes 3 black women and the show is set in college. While there are other shows like A Different World was released in the 90s. I enjoyed having a black female protagonist in a diverse TV show. If you're not familiar with the series, Grownish is set in the fictional college Cal U with protagonist Zoe Johnson and a group of friends Jazz, Sky, Anna, Nomi, Vivek, Aaron, Luca, and Doug. These characters who make their way through college together have different situations. For example, Zoe is from a middle-class family, while Jazz and Sky are seen struggling financially while keeping their sports scholarship. This enables the show to debate different topics related to college while exploring different perspectives. While doing this, they also talk about topics related to race. Zoe, Jazz, and Sky are the characters I'll be talking about later on. Other characters who got added in later seasons, including Jillian, I will also be talking about. The reasons I'll be talking about these characters is due to a very obvious problem on the show: colorism. What is colorism? Margaret L. Hunter's research, Race, Gender, and the Politics of Skin Tone, describes colorism through the concept of the beauty queue. This is where white and light-skinned women are placed at the front of this beauty queue and dark-skinned women are placed at the back. While prioritizing beauty seems shallow, according to Hunter, being considered beautiful allows women to gain access to benefits, such as better marriages, higher incomes, and better education compared to women of darker skin tones. This means that women of color will attempt to get these features. While colorism affects black men as well in different ways, I'm only discussing the women on the show Grownish and therefore will not be touching on the effects of colorism on black men. The light-skinned women I said I would be discussing are Zoe, Jazz, and Sky. However, before we get into that, we need to discuss a character who appears in Season 2, Episode 6. A character who inspires Jazz and Sky to change their social media images, even though they were shaming her the entire episode. Yes, we will be discussing the character Chastity. Chastity is a basketball player. Whether she is good at basketball is debatable, however. She is more well known for having a big social media presence and for being attractive, as Aaron and Vivek point out. Aaron will become important later on. Jazz and Sky throughout the entire episode make their opinion on her very clear, shaming her for her supposed sexuality on social media and the way men decide to see her games just for her looks, and state that there are better players who deserve her spot. In order to understand Jazz and Sky's emotions, let's dive into their background. Jazz and Sky are twins. They are both track athletes on scholarships and are usually seen as a package deal since they are always together. While they do have a scholarship, they are seen struggling financially, even going so far as to sell their own gear for money, which could get them kicked off the scholarship. So their frustration at Chastity makes sense. It would be easy to just paint them as angry black women, but them inevitably following in her footsteps in order to gain more followers and gain more money, while slightly hypocritical, is still understandable. However, after this change, there is no mention of their behavior towards Chastity, which is quite unfair to her character. While the twins are both similar in personality, Jazz is seen as the more outspoken one amongst the two, as she is seen getting into debates with the group, especially Zoe, the main protagonist. Jazz has a love interest, Doug, in the first season, who becomes her boyfriend. Now remember how the twins wanted to follow in Chastity's footsteps? This doesn't sit well with most of the group, including Doug. In Season 2, Episode 8, Jazz and Sky begin posting with more skin showing on their social media with the help of Zoe, despite her disagreeing to the entire thing. Jumping back to Season 1, let's talk about Zoe. Zoe Johnson has a total of 3 love interests throughout Season 1. One of them is Cash, the basketball player who had posters next to Chastity. He's concerned about his image as the public is aware of his bad upbringing, and as the internet does, he gets hateful comments. When he starts dating Zoe, she becomes the target for hateful comments as well. While this doesn't bother Zoe, it begins to get under Cash's skin as comments are being made about Zoe's supposed sexual history online. Why is this important? Because he then decides to clarify Zoe's lack of sexual history on social media without her permission, and even goes so far as to tell Zoe that if she was more sexually active, he wouldn't be with her. This could have been an opportunity to discuss over-sexualization, but instead this was used to create tension between them for a love triangle. The twins are the main focus of the episode It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp, an episode about the struggles of dating as a black woman. An interesting point is that Jazz and Sky talk about their struggles in dating, but Zoe has not had these struggles, despite all the black women in the main cast having light skin. Colorism is also commented on this episode. Remember Aaron? The group points out to him that while he does date black women, as he states, they all have light skin. In order to prove the group wrong about his colorist dating bias, he talks to Shakura, a dark-skinned woman. Now, Shakura is the first dark-skinned woman to be introduced on this show, and after this episode, she is never brought up or mentioned again. Why is this important? Because the way she was represented sets the tone for the show's treatment of dark-skinned women. She barely had any dialogue outside of talking to Aaron. She was used by him to show the group of friends that he is not biased when it comes to dating, essentially denying his bias. However, later on in the episode, Aaron does acknowledge his bias, and when it seems like a conversation about colorism and dating is about to start, Vivek jokes that all these women he dates looks like his mum, who is also a light-skinned woman, and the episode ends. This colorist preference could also have been explored through the character Doug. When he's first introduced, he is seen at parties with white women, and it's assumed that he only dates white women. But when asked why he dates white women by Sky, he responds, just because he can. But at the end of the episode, he bumps into Sky and Jazz and says that the question took him by surprise and that he is open to dating everybody. While this ties up the episode nicely and allows Jazz and Doug to be interested in each other, it completely dismisses the entire topic of the episode, colorism. The show could be criticized for ironically only featuring black women with light skin in an episode discussing colorism, especially when the only dark-skinned black woman is tokenized while other black women are given more personality. Shakura is just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to representation of dark-skinned women on this show. The later seasons introduce two dark-skinned women who become reoccurring characters on the show. Rochelle, who is introduced in the second season but comes up more in the third season, and Jillian, who is a part of the main cast in season 3. This is a step in the right direction considering the lack of diversity in skin tones when it comes to this show. However, the portrayal of these characters are important as well, since Shakura being used as a plot device and later dropped shows the impact of colorism on this show. Rochelle is Aaron's love interest. She is portrayed as a jealous character since Zoe and Aaron still have feelings for each other despite him dating Rochelle. Ultimately, Aaron chooses Zoe over Rochelle. And despite being chosen, Zoe ends up having tension with Rochelle later on as she is unsure how to navigate their dynamic. This shows how Zoe is allowed to make mistakes and be very flawed, and have that come across as her being on a learning curve. While I appreciate flawed characters, it's a shame that this comes at the expense of one of the few dark-skinned women on the show. As the only reoccurring dark-skinned black woman, having this character being thrown aside for a light-skinned woman shows the colorism the first season was touching on. If the first season episode on colorism was linked back to this moment, it could show Aaron being aware of his colorist bias. Instead, this doesn't happen. In season 3, Jillian almost follows in Rochelle's footsteps as she is Luca's love interest. However, Jillian is seen as a chill girl, which is more positive compared to Rochelle's portrayal. While there is conflict between Zoe, Luca, and Jillian because Luca was Zoe's ex, this tension does not paint Jillian negatively, as she always treated Zoe with kindness, and they even became friends. Jillian is the only positive representation of dark-skinned black women on the show and is a step in the right direction. However, only having 1 out of 3 dark-skinned women be portrayed positively is not enough, and she only appears in half of the 3rd season. Grownish is a good show and has the potential to have different representations of black women of different skin tones through Jillian. Though Jillian is good representation, she is the only good representation, and that is simply not good enough. Her character also doesn't erase the portrayal of other characters like Shakura and Rochelle, but having more well-rounded and developed dark-skinned characters will allow the series to have better representation. As an aspiring film researcher, this is something that I could provide information on through an analytical perspective as well as the perspective of a black woman. Thank you for listening.